Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday, December 11th here, also known as playoff time on the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Mike Wright.
Calm down, Kyle.
I'm in the playoffs.
What in the freaking world?
Act like you've been there before, dude. My goodness. It's your first time?
Which playoffs are you excited about?
The main Ballers Dynasty League. Because it is my first time being in that playoff.
Okay.
Congratulations. What seed did you get, Kyle?
You know, we clawed our way to get into the playoffs. We're a 5 seed. But
motivated.
This has been
doubted by the league.
The thing is, this is the heart of Dynasty, though, because we went from the worst team in the league, rebuilding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The plan started. It's come to fruition a little earlier, and now we're in the playoffs after making a really nice run over the last month. So I mean,
how many games in a row have you won?
You're like the Texans of last year. Nobody thought you'd be there, and here you are.
And what's your pick situation? Are you still flush, or have you kind of expended it all?
We've slowly spent it, but we do have somebody who's been at the bottom of the league. We have Brandon's pick, so we still have a high first rounder for this next year.
Nice.
And a good young nucleus, which, I mean, I'm going to brag about some of those players in a little bit, but I'm feeling pretty good about myself, and I wanted to bring it up.
Hey, that's cool. I'm glad you brought it up, because in that league, I have the bye, Kyle.
On the other side of the bracket, I see you over there, just kind of peering out.
I wasn't even going to bring it up, but you're so excited for how great that team is. Mine is not playing this week because it's so good.
That's the best, is when you can just say, like, oh, good luck this week, Kyle. I'm not playing.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, I hope you don't have just a weird, bad performance in playoff week 1. That would be unfortunate.
That would be terrible. And some of you guys out there, you are so excited because your plan has come to fruition. In another one of our leagues, which I know everyone loves hearing at the start of the podcast, you two are playing each other for the second week in a row.
We are.
I'm just here so I won't get fined.
And Betz was able to defeat us this past week, knock us out of taking the bye for Dino Jr. All it took was Jayden Reed having his first ever game with no points. That's all it took.
He was just there for a good time on Thursday night last week. Not here for the points.
I don't think he had a good time.
Just here to hang out. I won that by basically 2 points over you guys.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, you know, it's kind of fun to knock you guys out of the bye week and hear you guys upset about it. But, like, truthfully, I'm pretty sure I'm losing this week. So
now you get to play us again.
I know.
And we actually have the King is back.
And you won't get a 0 from one of your guys. So, yeah, congratulations on the win this week, Mike, and congratulations on the title.
Thank you.
Your pizza will be delivered on Friday to the office.
Just bench your team and get it over with.
Congratulations. That's all I got to say.
On this episode, we will be doing a weekly rewind, talking about some players who balled out this past week. I mean, all 3 of our guys are just showing up at the right time of the year. And then we're going to play a little risk or reward. I feel like the names that we have on the show are players that people have on their rosters, and it could go one of 2 ways. And so we're going to give some advice of what do you do now and just start to prep yourself for the offseason, because, I mean, Dynasty has such volatile players that you think you know what they are in the middle of a season, and then one thing changes, then all of a sudden you have to kind of reassess, like, how am I viewing this player? And then what does everybody else in my league think about this player? I'm even, when you guys were talking about Jayden Reed, I don't know what to, because you could tell somebody, hey, by the way, did you know that Jayden Reed is the wide receiver 13 right now? And it's like, oh, that's some good information there. That's a pretty good player on one of my roster. But if you've had Jayden Reed on a roster, it's been impossible to figure out week to week of, like, when you start, like, I have him on a roster, I'm in the playoffs, I have a bye. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision this week. I'm just going to keep pushing it down the road. He's just an impossible player. So
over the last month, Jayden Reed, so we're talking 4 games, he is averaging 18 yards a game.
18 receiving yards?
He is averaging, I mean, a 0 definitely plummets it, but it's 23 yards, 26 yards, 24, 0. So even when, I mean, he was the wide receiver 12 2 weeks ago against Miami because 2 of his 3 receptions were touchdowns.
What's crazy about the Jayden Reed thing, too, is, like the conversation all offseason, whether it was redraft or dynasty or whatever, is like, yeah, they run a rotation, but like when one guy misses, who's going to be on the field. And like Dobbs has missed, 2 games, 3 games?
It's been Wick.
Christian
He's
Watson
been on the field.
Christian Watson's missed time, and it still hasn't really been consistent. So, yeah, Josh Jacobs is the offense right now. So we'll see if that changes.
I remember this offseason, we went through the gamut of Jayden Reed stuff where I think, Mike, especially, you were kind of on the opposite of Andy, where you're like, man, the efficiency's great. The big plays, the touchdowns, the involvement in the running game is great. And I remember putting out a thread of all the times he ran a route in 2 wide. He only did it twice last year, and Andy was not happy about it. And yet, remember week 1 when it was just an explosion? And I was like, well, taking the L on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's kind of like we're probably all just wrong, and who really knows what he is?
Yeah, it's pain for everyone. I'm looking at it on the year, guys. He is a 17% target share.
That's not
on
great.
Average. Like that's not even like a wide receiver 2 level of production, or not production, but involvement. That's wild.
His
Weird.
touchdowns
They're
last
weird.
year were one of those things as a rookie where you looked at and you go, okay, well, this is good. Obviously, we want touchdowns, but it was definitely an area for us to look at and go, this is an outlier player who, we talked about Jahan Dotson as a rookie, Reed as a rookie, guys that like get in the end zone, kind of get boosted when you start to peel back the curtain and go, man, like you're not even seeing 20. Like, I wonder what his target share at. I'm assuming it's at like 22%.
This year?
This year or last year?
Last year.
Oh, I was like, I just said this
Kyle,
year.
pay
No,
attention.
last year. No, last year.
I can get that for you. You want it?
Yeah, so it's like hard to
18.
jump on. Yeah, see, that's so hard to project year to year. So
Yeah.
the fact that he went down 1% is kind of wild.
Chase volume. Volume is efficiency is fabulous, but volume is the king still.
Yeah. So he's a weird player. Right now, I don't even know where to put him, but in a lot of dynasty circles, he's kind of still seen as that wide receiver, like a strong wide receiver 2, 15 to 18 range.
Wow.
And I want him on my team. I feel like I still can't count him. He's more like a flex, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair.
For a roster. So let's jump in.
Weekly Rewind.
Every week, we rewind the film and do a deep dive on a player. I will let Betz go first because this player, was essentially like in DFS, he was the most important person of week 14. And then if you had Ken Bone and you had Charbonnet as the backup, like you probably won your week as well.
Charbonnet was great. 22 carries, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Also added 7 catches for over 50 yards on 7 targets in the receiving game.
7.
An explosion. What's interesting though is like I went back and looked at all of his carries and his touches, and the offensive line is like still not doing anybody any favors there in Seattle. Like Kenneth Walker, like we always talk about him as like kind of a boom bust runner. Like he'll give you 2 yards here and there, then he'll rip off a 50-yard run. And for Charbonnet, like he was getting hit in the backfield a ton in this game. So he had a ton of volume, but a lot of it was like 2 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards. And then all of a sudden he hits those long ones. So it's been kind of the same story with Charbonnet. I thought what was really interesting with him this past week is, coming out of UCLA, I know, Mike, you were a huge fan. He was super explosive. Like I love the tape too when he was coming out of college. And then like for a year or so in the NFL, he's kind of been like a plodder and it hasn't really been that exciting. And you finally saw some of that burst again this past week. So I don't know where the truth is on that in terms of his explosiveness and all that kind of thing. But obviously the game was incredible. Definitely looked like he could be a true bell cow if he ever gets the opportunity. Obviously with Ken Walker there, that won't happen super often. But when Walker misses, you know what you've got in Charbonnet, and they trust him a ton.
The craziest thing is that, like he saw the stat we had was like 48% of the team's total rush attempts to targets. Like basically 50% of their plays went to Charbonnet. And with Walker, we've never seen him go above 42%. And so it's one of the weird situations where when you have a guy and then a backup, Walker's going to be spelled every once in a while. But when you have nobody else behind him, it's what, Kenny McIntosh?
Mm-hmm.
Then the backup gets even more of a workload. It's a weird situation.
It really is. Yeah.
What did you guys think of Charbonnet's day as far as his tape? Because even though the box score was like incredible, like I said, there were still a bunch of plays where you're just like, okay, like that wasn't incredible. It wasn't like he was ripping off chunk gains over and over again like Rico Dowdle on Monday night.
Our boy, our beautiful, beautiful boy. I thought Charbs, I thought he looked quite good. Like as in, him being the reason why a lot of these chunk plays happened, and not loved what Rico did on Monday night. But there was a few of the explosive runs where you're like, you could have drove a Cadillac through there, and all you had to do was run straight at full speed.
For sure.
Where that was not happening for Charbonnet. He had to break at least one really good tackle to get the chunk play going. So I was impressed. I was annoyed with him that it had taken him so long to show any of the promise that we loved as a prospect. I was annoyed that it was not Ken Walker, and I really needed him to be playing that week. Like looking at all this yardage and just juicy fantasy points that Ken Walker would have been scoring. And it's the more annoying thing is, to just keep using that word over and over, I guess the bigger question is this a genie moment here for Charbs? Because Ken Walker has been the guy. I know Charbs has been working in here and there, and it's been annoying, especially when it comes in, when he's like inside the 5. And it's like, what are we doing here with nothing creative for Walker? And then we give up and we let Charbs try one out. Is this a moment like JSN? It just happened for this team where JSN was nothing, has the one unbelievably huge game, and then the team goes, oh, well, that worked really, really well. Perhaps we need to do that more often. I don't think that Charbonnet is overtaking Ken Walker, but have concerns for rest of season. Does the workload get even more balanced between the two of them? Should Ken Walker actually be healthy rest of season?
Yeah, it's
that
also
dude's fragile, man. He likes to miss games.
He's going to be in the final year of his contract this next year. So it's an interesting dynasty conversation. We're not going to spend, a ton of time on Walker today, but over the offseason, we're going to debate about him and whether you stay in for one more year. What is his second contract situation like? I mean, the offensive staff of this team is Ryan Grubb. Remember, we talked about him a lot at the beginning of the season. I feel like he hasn't gotten a lot of love for a team that's won 4 straight. They're first in the division because Geno's numbers have been meh for the most part. It's just they've been grinding out wins. It's interesting. They just don't have the same he doesn't have the same loyalty of somebody who's been there for 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's a new coaching staff.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Mike, you've got somebody that you love.
So I watched Grandpappy Thielen here, the Carolina Panthers. If you've had your head under a rock for the last couple of weeks, the Panthers are playing much better. It's exciting football. It's not Bryce Young taking a snap, screaming in pure fear and terror, running around in circles, and then throwing a target that's 5 yards off of the wide receiver. They've been better. And a huge part of that last 2 weeks is Adam Thielen has been back. And so I went and watched it. It's against the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a great defense. Pulled in 11 targets, caught 9 of them for 102 yards. And watching, just how he's doing, and he's old, guys. I mean, I don't think that's the headline, but we're going to start there anyways. Of
what?
As in watching him, like after the catch, you go, oh yeah, that's an older wide receiver. But the shiftiness, the understanding the position and how to leverage and how to run routes, it's still top notch. I mean, there were several times where it was clear that Thielen was not the first read of the design, but had he been, it was wide open. I mean, he could. I believe that Thielen could have pulled in like 13 or 14 receptions in this game if they had gone back to the OG Bryce Young offense where everything gets thrown to Thielen. They're trying to work other guys in, but he's still competent, and you can still get value from him. You got 102 yards. It took 9 catches to get there. That's my point of we're the days of Thielen ripping off, an explosive touchdown. That's probably gone, but he should be in your flex. I really believe that he is going to have a strong finish to the end of the year. We got Dallas next week. Fantastic. Arizona, they're so weird. Their defense is so weird. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. And then Tampa Bay in week 17. Like, this is a good 3-game run here for Adam Thielen to close.
This is what we all imagined, that we would be talking about Adam Thielen at the end of the year. That's when these veteran players really make their mark in fantasy.
Dude, fantasy is insane. Over the off season, if you've been supporting the show that long, thank you so much. But I made my aggressive move this off season was I traded Zay Flowers and Evan Engram for Brandon Ayuk, and like that was the bones of the deal, and a deal that I was probably willing to just do right out. But the negotiations went back and forth, and I ended up getting Rico Dowdle and Jerome Ford were like the throw-ins for the deal of like, come on, let's get this done. I had to start both of them this past week, guys. Like, your dynasty running back room is never good. You should always be adding secondary guys, backup guys, because as the season goes along, I mean, it was the way it was set up, and I'm not without running backs. I had some bye week problems. I had a bunch of injuries pop up, and it was wild. Of like these 2 guys who were a throw-in are now a foundational starting point where I'm playing to get the bye week. And I mean, Ford was fine. Ford was like 7 points in our league, and then Dowdle, of course, he's the beautiful baby boy, just out there doing work.
It is hilarious when you kind of sit down and look at like thinking about some of the guys you might need over the next 3 weeks to win a title. Yeah, maybe it's like Adam Thielen. Maybe it is Rico Dowdle. It's like, dude, Jerry Judy, who did nothing for a year plus. Now it's like Jerry Judy is like a top 5 start every week, right? It's so crazy, and it's a reminder how impossible it is to predict not just what's going to happen like in a month in the NFL, but like across 3 months. Good luck. It's never going to happen.
I have Jonnu Smith in the league, who is now just a every single week flex for me. Not tight end spot, like flex.
Dude, Arthur Smith.
I feel like he was
right, man. Arthur knew.
Yeah, he did know. You know what? You're right. I'm sorry, Arthur.
Sorry, Arthur. You were right.
Well, for that part, not for the lack of Drake London, that part, and also accusing us of toxic groupthink, talking about Desmond Ridder not being good.
Yeah, I don't like that part. He was right about like, hey, I'm gonna keep feeding Jonnu over Pitts, guys.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
that
tell
was
you.
spot on.
No. All right, I got one more player, and it was Puka, who went absolutely
He is so
bonkers.
My brain still has a problem computing fifth rounder.
Yes.
I cannot understand how does the NFL miss that badly? Because just go put the tape on it this past week. He was unbelievable. Like he is an elite wide receiver.
Yes, he's
elite.
I was talking to Betz earlier. I was like, it's so weird to have somebody who gets manufactured touches. Like he had 5 jet sweeps, including a touchdown on one of them. But like the plays, like those plays are nice. They're fun little add-ons. But this is a legit receiver. He's not just. I was trying to ask Betz, like, who is he? Is he Debo with these manufactured touches?
No.
But he gets 15 targets. And so we were like going back and forth, like, this is like Percy Harvin running stuff, but Cooper Kupp volume as a receiver. It's like a weird combination of all of those things. And every time he touches the ball, it's a great play. It's like a positive play. He saw 52% of the team's first reads this past week. So like half the time when Stafford threw the first read, it was like, it's Puka. And it was all levels of the field, right? It wasn't just screens. It was down the field stuff. So he is wild. And the only thing I can point to of like, okay, this is why he stood out is his yards per out run against zone and everything else in college. From Washington to BYU, did stand out. And what was our metric again that we had for Puka?
Oh,
Your
the route rate?
proprietary metric, Mike.
So you're talking about route
The
rate?
route
Oh,
score.
a route score.
Oh, yeah. No, the route score. Sorry. I thought you were talking to Betz. I didn't know where we were going. Yes, the route score, he was like 99.9 percentile.
Yeah. So here's my way to put this into perspective, because if you watch the film, that game was obviously so fun to watch, and the whole time you're like, Puka is money for this team, putting up 44 points. So which wide receivers would you rather have over Puka? That's my actionable point in Dynasty, okay?
All right.
I'm assuming we'd all say Chase.
Yes.
Yep.
Jefferson.
Yes.
I'd still take Jefferson.
Amon-Ra.
Coin flip.
Oh, really?
Man, I didn't think we
incredible,
would
man.
I didn't think we'd get to the name already. Amon-Ra's 25. He's on the new contract.
The new deal.
Over Puka. I think I'd go with Amon-Ra based off of external circumstances of Stafford questions.
Yeah, that's the only hang up, right, in Puka's overall situation is just we know the Stafford
and
timeline.
McVay.
Yeah, the Stafford team level stuff is potentially changing, not just soon, but like maybe very soon, depending on what happens over the next year or so. So that's like the only hang up. But man, as far as like talent level and production and everything, like he's right there in the top 5, and I don't think it's really a debate.
Puka's I know I'm getting production, not this elusive. Like the next name on here is Malik Neighbors. It's like, well, we would all say Malik Neighbors has a higher ceiling, and it's elusive. It's in front of us. It's like he could be Jamar Chase. That's what we're saying to ourselves. And yet, who do you think's going to put out more wide receiver 1 performances over the next 2 to 3 years? I'd probably bet on Puka.
I would too.
I mean, Stafford's the big thing.
Yeah.
Stafford's under contract for 2 more years, but whatever that means, he's really year to year. But I think I'd rather take Puka, but I don't blame anyone that says Neighbors.
For sure.
The Jamar Chase happening into landing with the Bengals with Joe Burrow is, I mean, that is just a level that we're always going to be chasing. But I think we may need to pause and go, that was simply perfection, and it will never get. We won't have a wide receiver do that. Like you were hoping, not that Marv is Jamar Chase. They're very different types of players, but it was, hey, here we go, top 5 wide receiver with stable quarterback position, and it's been a disaster.
Imagine Jamar Chase in a Falcons uniform. Can you imagine that?
I think about it every day of my life. I was at my kid's bus stop today, and my neighbor brought it up to me. I didn't bring it up. He did.
That is hilarious.
Kyle Pitts. Was it one pick?
Every day I think about it. Yeah, and the thing is, like, I have a Pitts jersey from when, he was drafted, all this stuff. I feel like just this year, it's just slowly grown to like pure hatred.
Yeah.
And I was on the clock for my rookie picks, and I was like, Kyle Pitts it's a positional advantage. It's the new Travis Kelce. I'm like, what is Jamar? I guess I'll take Jamar. Oh, man.
Not a bad consolation prize.
If I had made that pick wrong, guys, oh my gosh.
He would not be on the show. Instead, you could get.
I'd be working. I'd be at Target saying like, this is not for me.
What's funny is that Jeremy and I have Pitts in Ballers Dynasty League.
Yeah, because you were he was the 104 at the time,
and we never start him. We have Njoku, but we just never start him. And it's one of those things where we're just like, I'll wait and hope that maybe he becomes Evan Ingram.
Dude, it's Kyle Pitts. Funny stories here. Another funny story. Quick, I co-manage a team with Brian Ketron. He brought me in this year, and it's a dynasty. It was like he's just flush with picks, and so this was a rebuild year, and we got a trade in. I had just joined the team, and we got the trade comes in, and it's Kyle Pitts for a 2027 first. And I'm like, Oh, dude, I think that's so far out. That's worth I would take the gamble. And he's like, yeah. We had Kyle Pitts. That's how little he was paying attention, and I was brand new. So we took the trade. We traded Kyle Pitts away for a 27 first. Like, we read the trade completely backwards, and once we realized what's happened, we're like, oh, that was a horrible mistake. Nope. We stole a 27 first.
That is so good. Mistakenly got a first out of it. That is great.
I don't know how Brian didn't know who was on his team, but
that's just next level management. That's what I'm hearing.
That's how his team got to where it is.
It's so it's
he
so
doesn't
bad.
know who he's trading with, what players are his or not.
So negligent that it's actually amazing. And we did good work.
Incredible stuff.
There's probably people in every league that are like, that guy has he's not just bad at fantasy football, he has no clue what he's doing. Every time he's clicking the button, no clue.
Clever like a fox.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Beautiful.
Hadn't heard that one in a while.
Beautiful.
I was like jamming along, and I'm like, wow, this drop is really long. But that's because it's all right.
I like it.
It is very well done. That drop still, like, I looked it up and I was doing our segments and stuff. I was like, this is long, but this is great. This is a great drop.
I think that was for a live show is why it ended up getting made that way. But I don't know.
Nice. Yeah, so we're going to be doing risk or reward on today's show and talk about some players that they have some exciting aspects to them, but there is some real risk and some fears of what do you do in Dynasty. It's one thing to have them in redraft. It's one thing to have them in best ball and be like, whatever happens. This is Dynasty where you are investing in a player beyond just 1 year. And, some of these names on this list today, I have on my roster. A couple of these I didn't even mean to. They're on Mike's roster. And I mean, we're just going to try to go through and say, what are the range of outcomes? What do you do in the offseason? When should you trade them, trade for, and then compare some names. So I'm going to start us off first because I do need some medical advice from Betz because I want to talk about George Pickens.
Yeah.
I really do. So George Pickens is almost 24. He will be in the final year of his rookie deal this next year, okay? Which is crazy to think about, but he's super young for his year. He has a grade 2 hamstring injury, and then what we think is that he will be out this week, Betz?
Correct. And I would say right now I would label him, at best, questionable for the week after.
Oh, come on, Betz. I think that I thought he was supposed to play.
They're also in a really tough spot, right? Because they're 10-3. They obviously care about seeding for the postseason, but at the same time, you can't risk him too early because you need him in the postseason. So they're in this kind of like awkward limbo stage for the team. But yeah, I don't think he plays this week, and I would say, like I said, he's questionable for next week. If it really is a grade 2 injury, I mean, this usually takes about a month. So yeah, I'd be shocked if he played this week.
Their seeding is interesting just from looking at the NFL because they're 10-3, they're the 3 seed. The Bills are the 2nd seed, but the Bills have a tough game this week at Detroit. So they could get that 2 seed, but I think we would say the bye is pretty far. So at one point, they will basically be locking themselves in at the 2 or 3 and probably resting their starters in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, just like really walking through it. So they are 10-3. The Chiefs are 12-1. They do play the Chiefs.
In week
17.
Okay.
So, yeah, maybe. And that week 16 against Baltimore is going to be, if it's so important. If they end up dropping a game against Philadelphia this week and Baltimore wins, man, that'll be tough.
So Pickens is in his 3rd year, and so far he's been the wide receiver 36, 26, and he's the wide receiver 26 right now, although his points per game has been a little bit better this year. If you've had George Pickens, and I'm a George Pickens manager in Dynasty, it is a wild ride week to week. And if you go through, like I went through and watched all of his end zone targets because he was leading the league before Jamar Chase decided to do his thing on Monday night. But I mean, every single play, there's just wild acrobatic stuff. And then there's just kind of like the timing's a little off with Russ. It was off with Fields at the beginning of the year. His pace with Russ, though, 130 targets, 1,380 yards, and 9 touchdowns. But he has just 3 touchdowns on the year. Like in 3 years, George Pickens, guys, has 12 touchdowns. That's kind of like lower than you'd want. And yet in Dynasty, he's kind of seen as a fringe top 15 guy.
So for some perspective here, Kyle, once Russ, like if you just do the Russell Wilson games, he is averaging 13.6 half PPR points, which on the year, that puts him tied with CeeDee Lamb just in front of Terry McLaurin. So he would take over the 10 spot.
Okay.
Of like, so I mean, he's putting up averaging top 10 points. He's not giving you the top 3, but a top 10 player since Russ took over.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. It's fun when you have these explosive games, but you also get a lot of games where, at Cleveland a couple weeks ago, 4 for 48 against the Giants, 4 for 74. It's like the yardage is always going to be fine with him. It's just the touchdowns haven't really been there throughout his career. I guess I want to ask the question for him. Does he work out a contract extension, or does Tomlin let it play out and say this dude's kind of strange and locker room's a little different, and they let him test free agency like they've done with all the other dudes?
Yeah, Pittsburgh is incredible at finding talent, but finding talent that are humans that are harder to get along with. I guess I don't know how to phrase it, other than basically everyone who leaves Pittsburgh, for the most part, they end up it's a disaster because they needed the family, the structure that is the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin to maximize their talent and what they can do on a football field. So I think it honestly, that's everything to me, is his off-field behavior. I don't know what a better word to use here. Just of, can he grow? Can he become a grown-up, basically? And I think I've tried to dive in a bit more on these things, and there's some signal coming out of like feeling like Mike Tomlin is working at overtime here with Pickens, of trying to work through something, and he's still doing dumb crap, right? Like we just had an egregious personal foul from him that in the moment of the game was like, what are you doing, man? Your team, you can't afford these 15 yards. So that is everything. The talent is completely there. I'm assuming that Russ gets re-signed by this team. It would be a weird situation if Russell Wilson were not the quarterback of the Steelers next year. So my projection is, yeah, they let Pickens ride dirty, as in go into next year without the contract extension.
He's going to be super happy about that.
That might be like a test. Like it could legit be a test. If I'm Mike Tomlin and I'm feeling better about where George Pickens is getting to as a human, I would test it. I'd be like, okay, here's the situation. How are you going to handle that? And if he responds well, then I would reward him with the really big contract. Because we got to know. We have to know that we can count on you, and that when we're in a really tight game, you're not going to do something boneheaded, or when if someone throws a pick, you're not going to body slam the DB. George Pickens done some wild stuff this year.
He is so entertaining, though, isn't he? I mean, as a neutral fan of, I'm not a fan of the Steelers or anything, but just like watching Pickens play every week, you're like, what is he going to do this week?
It's entertainment.
Yeah, and like in the locker room before the Browns game this past week, obviously he didn't play, but someone asked him about Greg Newsome, the corner, and they had some beef a couple weeks ago, and he said, yeah, I don't even know who that is. Like, you don't need to be doing that, right? Like, grow up and, don't do that stuff. And Tomlin will not wait around for that kind of thing. I mean, you've seen like
No, he won't.
6 or 7 instances this year of either the locker room talk or on the field personal foul issues. I mean, it was the Dallas game early on in the year where he kind of got benched or like played half the snaps just because Tomlin said they want like more consistent production out there or whatever the verbiage was. Like the talent is undeniable. Like, and people that are like film experts out there are saying he's like a top 5 real life NFL talent at wide receiver. I'm not here to judge that, but
you had Aqib Talib just, I mean,
Yep.
you know,
People are
take
high
it for
on
what it's worth, but his opinion was it's Jamar Chase, Jefferson, and George Pickens. I mean, I think he said that on like the Kay Adams show.
Yeah.
But players, and they really respect what George Pickens can do. So I do see the two paths of if he gets an extension with the Steelers, heck yeah, he's probably a top 12, top 10 dynasty wide receiver. He'll still be ranked really high for me next year, even if he doesn't have a contract. But if he then moves teams to get the bag of money, I will be very, very terrified.
agreed.
I made a trade a couple years ago to get him, and I got Pickens and a second for Ayuk. And at the time, Ayuk has a great season. I feel dumb about it. And now I'm on the other side. I was like, well, I'd rather have Pickens than Ayuk. He's just such a hard player.
Both his knees work.
Yeah, and he's just way younger. He's just really weird, man. Like having him as a dynasty manager. There's the only 2 other players since 2000 to have the same kind of profile of him as like huge yards per catch, so over 16 plus, and the type of production. Deshaun Jackson and Mike Wallace, who are super volatile players, but George Pickens has a little bit more refined part of his game, where like he's not just a jump ball guy. And I think this offseason we talked about that. So if you have George Pickens, you know, it's like you're just going to wait it out and see. I think if you're trying to trade for him, there's some volatility. What would you offer if you were going for George Pickens? Because it's going to take a first. It might take 2 firsts, a first and something else. And that's a high price to pay.
My personal philosophy on the Pickens situation for trading, I don't think he's a guy that I'm trading for. I just think there's a ton of risk. And I could be wrong on that. But for me, he's more of like either a hold or trade away. If you can either tier up in someone else's eyes, like if they're a huge Pickens fan in your league, if you can tier up somehow, I would do that. Or if I can make what I view as a lateral move and add a second onto it or something, that's kind of how I'm approaching Pickens personally. So I don't think I'm trading for him, just given the uncertainty in his situation.
I think I'm trading for him at this point now, as the price has just gone up and up and up and up over this season. I don't know that I would trade for him unless a contract came through, but then the price is going to go through the roof. If I have him, which I do have him in a spot, I am holding because he's a hold of I'm not waiting, you know, like Kyle, I see you have a couple different names down here. It's like Olave, Roma Dunze, like you're still waiting on those.
Yes.
Maybe less on Olave, but like Rome, top 10 pick, great prospect, but you're waiting for it to happen. With George Pickens, maybe I'm waiting for this extension, but in the meantime, I'm getting top 10 wide receiver production. So I prefer to hold on to him and then let the disaster unfold, and then I'll just be holding the bag.
It makes sense. Betz, you're up next.
Let's talk about a starting running back for the Giants, Tyrone Tracy, who
this dude is brutal.
Just turned 25 at the end of November, right around Thanksgiving, in his rookie year. So he was drafted in the 5th round this past offseason out of Purdue. And is
he older than Ray Davis?
Good question. I don't know on that.
I think so.
Ray Davis is 25, so I think Tracy's a little bit older.
But obviously, you know, coming out of Purdue, he converted from a wide receiver, which is kind of why we saw the uncertainty in like how is he going to fit in the NFL. But you've seen him be very, very good for the Giants, which, you know, is saying a lot considering the team and the offensive line. Since week 5, when he took over as the RB1, he's been the RB12 in fantasy, averaging more half PPR points per game than guys like Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Breece Hall in that sample since week 5. So he's been good. It's hard to argue with the production, but when you peel back the curtain a little bit and you realize, okay, he's 25, they don't have a quarterback, you know, and some of the efficiency stuff as far as like where he ranks in like elusive rating, broken tackle rate, that kind of stuff. It's all fine. It's all good. It's not elite. It's not terrible. He's kind of right in the middle of the pack. So I'm questioning, like, I don't know how good he truly is. I don't know what his shelf life as like an NFL starting running back even is. I feel like this is very Antonio Gibson-esque, where similar situation, not sure how long he'd be an NFL running back or a starter, but he's shown enough. Does he get another chance at it next year? That's kind of how I see it. But then after that, I think it's a complete unknown. So Tyron Tracy, I've loved having him, especially considering you probably drafted him in a rookie draft somewhere in the 3rd round. And you're like, I'm starting this dude every week in a dynasty league. That is insane return on your investment.
Yeah, it is.
I think for the offseason, he's probably going to be a guy that I look to potentially cash in on and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. Do you guys think Dable keeps his job?
That was my question too.
I don't think so.
I stole it.
I don't think so.
My gut reaction is no. And also on the sideline during that game, which was a gross game, it was 14-11. I felt so bad for Dable the whole time. Like, this is what you have to deal with. This team.
Watching that game, I was like, please do not let this go to overtime. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, can we just move on?
The day 3 running backs, and Mike's about to talk about another one in just a second, but what happens in Dynasty is we get a little, spurt. So what'd you say, Betz? It's been since week
5. He's been the RB12.
That's a large amount in fantasy. So when we look back and redraft, we'll be like, he was awesome. In Dynasty, we then take that and then elevate somebody over the offseason too. And I'm just looking at day 3 rookie running backs. So 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounders that averaged over 9 PPR points per game over the last decade. It's guys like Jordan Howard, Elijah Mitchell, Dameon Pierce, Michael Carter, guys that, and Jeremy Langford is another name.
Tyler Algier.
Jeremy Langford.
Tyler Algier.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Jeremy Langford.
Oh,
man.
baby.
Do you remember the next year?
It was terrible.
Langford was.
Well, then Langford was replaced by Howard.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's the thing.
Right?
But
Yeah,
Howard wasn't on our radar.
Right. Well, Jeremy Langford, if you were a supporter of the fantasy footballers, I was OUT on Langford. I was like, this guy stinks, guys. He's just it's a matter of happenstance, his success.
The Bears had Langford, and then they had Howard the next year. And then they had Tariq Cohen the next year, where they got these day 3 guys.
Buck Allen on this list.
Dude, it's a fun list. The problem is in Dynasty, we kind of boosted all of them, and you kind of look through the list. Bucky's also on this list. But like Dameon Pierce is the perfect example of the guy who had a good stretch run, got boosted the next year to being a lot higher than what we thought. So I don't know. What do you guys?
Algier, Algier broke the rookie record for the Atlanta Falcons of rushing yardage, and he was rewarded by them drafting his replacement in the top 10. Like that. That's the hard part about Tracy, where the conversation for him starts at the top of, does Dable keep his job? Because if Dable does not keep his job, then the new coaching staff is going to come in, and we see these guys just get, unfortunately, just completely tossed aside. I mean, you had he's not in this list of day 3 rookie running backs because he was not drafted. Oh gosh, and now it's Jacksonville. Now his name is totally gone. Who is it? James Robinson.
James Robinson. Yeah.
James Robinson. James Robinson was awesome. He was Philip Lindsay for the Broncos was awesome. And then they're like, thank you for your service. We don't think you're good enough. It's wild. It goes back to the thing of my brain cannot compute Puka Nacua because these coaches and things they hold on to. Well, you were a 5th rounder. I mean, I don't know for sure that's what they're actually saying, but the actions of all these GMs and coaches and things says that they still think about it and that a guy that they draft in the 2nd round is just better.
Yeah. Because you have a former 5th round running back, Mike, that is very much in the same exact situation. It's a name that Betz also wanted to bring up, is Chase Brown. Like, he's been awesome. He's been an RB1 for 5 straight weeks. He's the RB12 on the season. But he's in the same situation where he looks like the only dude. It's on a good offense, and yet year to year, there's some risk and reward.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's older. I mean, he's in year 2 right now. He'll be 25 next season. I think he is. No, I'm not even saying thing. He's safer. He's so much safer than Tyrone Tracy.
Definitely.
Yes.
And yet you go, like, you got to look, beyond just the fantasy points, because he's had several games where he's getting huge volume, and it is so inefficient with that volume. And yet this is the team that continued to give Joe Mixon the ball over and over and over, despite him being incredibly efficient. So if I have Chase Brown, I'm keeping him. Like, I'm not selling high this offseason. Of maybe more news pops out, but as of right now today, I would be moving forward with Chase Brown, but mentally putting him in the right spot, like in my checklist of my running backs are not safe if I have Chase Brown. I'm in a yellow zone where I have this guy who could be a top 10 fantasy running back. He could get replaced in the second round of the draft in 2025. So, but his risk is worth his reward. So I'm going to hold on to him probably no matter what. And multiple firsts come and get Chase Brown. Okay, now we're talking. But I'm saying, like, I'm not trying to get out of Chase Brown.
Makes sense. Ideally he would be my RB3, but he's my RB2 on a roster because I kind of just lucked into having him as a backup. There's some names though that I want to compare because, like, going into next year, I agree. Like, we have to deal with the draft, and they probably will add somebody depending on what. I mean, Zach Moss was a 2-year deal, but I'm pretty sure they can get out in the second one, and then they're going to add somebody else to this backfield eventually. Would you rather have Chase Brown or Bucky Irving, who also was a day 3 running back?
That's tough.
Wow.
I think I would lean to Bucky, but I wouldn't.
I think we'd all say Bucky is more talented.
Yeah, but I wouldn't fault anybody. Like, if you have Chase Brown, you know how good he's been. But Bucky will definitely have a role next year, no doubt.
Yeah, I think Bucky is safer to end up. Maybe it falls down to being a running back 2 type of a player, but Rachaad White's still there next year, right? Or is he in
final year?
Yeah, I think I'd rather have Chase Brown.
Okay, I had a list here of just guys that got elevated in the same way we talked about earlier. Somebody who's a rookie who has a good stretch. In your second year, if you have a stretch as day 3 running back, there's guys like Kyron who did that last year, and then this year he's just been a stud. There's Devonta Freeman, remember, who had that monster year just out of nowhere.
Yep.
Miles Gaskin was another dude who was drafted late, had a guys, 16 points per game. And the next year he was like a top 5, round pick in redraft. These are all guys that got elevated. Chris Carson, Ramondre, and Jay Ajayi is another fun one. And it feels like you can still get another year of production, but to expect anything more from Chase Brown, I think, is asking a lot. I'll give you one more name that will probably hurt to bring it up. Would you rather have Chase Brown or Kenneth Walker in Dynasty, who is in the final year of his contract this next year?
I think that's an actual fair question. It shouldn't be, but I think it's a fair question.
That's how I felt putting it down.
Wow. I don't know.
Mike is just perplexed.
Well, because I have a deep personal connection to
he's always been a Ken Bone guy.
Ken Bone Walker. And there is a world where Chase Brown is just so much better than him rest of career. Betz, who would you go with?
I think I lean to Walker, but I don't feel good about it, quite frankly.
Yeah, the thing with Walker is, and you alluded to it, Kyle, of next year's his last year. I think, barring catastrophic injury, I think Ken Walker gets a huge contract from somebody. I don't know if it's Seattle, but I feel very confident in him getting the bag.
To be the guy.
Yeah, or I don't know. It depends on where you go. Like, some teams will give you the bag and you're still in a timeshare.
Like a Swift or Jacobs type deal.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely could see Ken Walker getting that. But then it's you're in the box of, like, it could be a boat, or he could take the Miles Sanders path and go to whoever the crap team is at the moment, get a huge bag of money, and then we never hear from him again.
It is nice to see you go through the motions right here with Ken Walker. And
It feels bad, man.
I feel like I just saw you turn a corner and you go like, I think I have to come to grips with this is who he is now. And he's good. He's a good NFL running back, but he's not great. And at this point, is it better to cut your losses and trade him away on the promise of people think he's a top 10 running back?
Right.
I wouldn't put him there in Dynasty. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm going to give us the big boy name that carries the most risk or reward in all of fantasy football. So let's talk about Christian McCaffrey and what you do and where you go, because he's 28 and a half years old. This is year 8 in the NFL. And remember, back in June, he signed a 2-year extension. And so if you look at his contract, it's basically a 2 years and let's see. That's kind of like where he's at with dead cap money and everything else. April 1st, he has a bunch of guaranteed money coming. So he's on this roster for next year, and then 2026, most likely. I'm going to read his words, okay? Not mine. This is Christian McCaffrey's words. Quote, "This wasn't my year, and sometimes when it rains, it pours. You can feel sorry for yourself and listen to the birds, or you can hold the line." So I will ask you guys, in Dynasty, are you feeling sorry for yourself and listening to the birds, or can you hold the line with a player who could win you the league, or you could be left holding the bag? So
I'm going to let you go, Betz.
Okay, because you're a Christian McCaffrey Dynasty manager.
Yeah, I have him.
I do too.
Okay.
In a spot. And actually, I traded for him. This is a league.
On a strong team or a rebuild?
No. Going for it. This is a team where the deadline was still open 2 weeks ago. I was like, yeah, I'm going for this. So this hurts. And I have felt bad for myself. I'm not going to lie. But Christian McCaffrey's always been a guy for me that, like, there's never a time, there hasn't been anyway in his career, where people aren't in on him. But like in Dynasty, there's been a little bit of ebbs and flows where it's like the asking price is just insane. You will never, ever get him. Then there's been times where it's like there's a little window to go get him right now. And I think this offseason there is going to be a little window to go get him. Now, obviously, he's going to be turning 29. It's a different part of his career arc. So obviously the asking price is way different. But I do think this is a guy that, like, one more year of elite production, maybe 2, I think is very, very likely, assuming health. That's been the question, of course. This year was just kind of never got going, right? I mean, the Achilles thing going all the way back to late July, then the PCL, which is just bad luck, honestly, the way he fell on his knee. So the PCL will heal. There will be no concerns for me for that next year. And they're committed to him. I don't know if Debo's back next year. Like, I think he's going to have a great season next year. So if you are a contender and you need a guy to go get, I love it for Christian McCaffrey. And if I've already traded for him, so I'm holding. I'm going to ride that one out for next year for sure.
They don't need Debo. They got a wide receiver one.
They got
Juwan Jennings. Yeah, they're good to go. I think the crazier question is, if you're trading for him and trading away, when is the opportune time to find that window? And then kind of asking yourself the question, if I'm trading for Christian McCaffrey, what price am I willing to pay to get one more season? Like, because 2 is great. I would love to get 2. I think if you're banking on 2, that's kind of like a little too optimistic. But what is the price you're willing to pay for a player who could give you a top 1 to 2, running back season? What is that price? And if you get more than that, that's great.
Man, I think the structure of your team, if you're trading for McCaffrey right now, which if you're going to trade for him right now, I think you do it, because the people who have him are emotionally in shambles. And guess what? He'll be ahead of schedule and his price will go up over the offseason. So if you're trying to get him and you want to make that play, right now is the time. But I think that if I'm a contending team, the structure of my team has to be that that I don't have to have Christian McCaffrey. Like, if I'm like, oh, he's the one piece that I'm missing, because if you're using assets to go get him, those are assets that could have been for the one piece that you got or that you need, and the risk of it is just too great for it to be the be all and end all for your team. I would have to be fine without him, and he's the dessert.
Yeah, because it's probably going to cost you a young player and a first. So would you do this deal if it was Chase Brown and a first? Or are you saying, hey, Chase Brown was like my RB2, RB3, and I still don't know when I'm going to give him McCaffrey. I think he would be an upgrade if he was playing over Chase Brown, but do you think that deal could get it done? Chase Brown and a first?
Hard to say. I mean, the stretch that Chase Brown has
people
had,
would take that.
If he continues that into the offseason for the next few weeks, then I think that's possible.
Okay. I think it's going to take a young player that people are excited about. And then also, if you want to figure out the opportune time, it's like, okay, your pick's only going to accrue more value as we get closer to the draft. So, make that deal in, I don't know, March, April. And,
got to thread that needle.
Yeah.
Of his value going up and your pick value going up, where they intersect, that's when you do it.
You feed as much negative propaganda about CMC in the shadows to that person, scare them off. At the same time, it's very close.
Did you guys play Mario Party as youths?
I played it yesterday with my kids.
So I don't know if the new ones still have it. I'm talking about Classic 64. But part of the game is you would collect these coins and then you buy stuff with the in-game currency. What you could do, though, is you got a little piggy bank. And then if you wanted to, you can use the piggy bank that either doubles your coins or halves your coins at the end immediately. You just flip a dice. And that's what I rolled with. I rolled with that thing. And that's why I'm on the team have McCaffrey. But did you guys ever do that, or are you gambling men? Where are you at with McCaffrey?
I've used that move before on the 64. If you want to go Ricky Bobby, if you're saying, hey, I'm going in, but I think with McCaffrey, if you have the assets to be able to trade away, and he's your RB2-3, like you're not saying he is the only piece. I have no running backs. I need McCaffrey. That's great. I'd love to be able to say that.
McCaffrey, as a rookie, was the RB11. Then he was the running back 3, the running back 1. 53, 39, 2, 1, 65. Currently. I mean, you talk about Ricky Bobby. If you ain't RB1, you're RB none.
You're irrelevant.
Let's say he becomes nothing. You have him on your roster, you're just holding him, and you're just riding this out into the sun, and he becomes nothing. You just remember the good times. You remember the journey.
The friends
hopefully
you made along
you had
the
him
way.
through a couple of. Yeah, because he's basically, him and LT are basically in my mind. And Gurley had a couple of years, but these superstars of fantasy football, the cheat codes that if you had them, you won that. So, a couple more names we want to bring up in risk reward bets. I have no idea what team this guy will play for next year.
Nobody does.
His dynasty value at least has something now.
Yeah, I think he's going to get a starting job somewhere. I don't know where, but I'm talking about Sam Darnold, who, I mean, kind of, if it wasn't for Lamar and Josh Allen, he's playing an MVP caliber with how the team is playing and the stats he's putting up. More passing yards than Lamar Jackson, more touchdowns than Josh Allen, less interceptions than Patrick Mahomes. He's played so well, yet there's the elephant in the room of J.J. McCarthy with this team, and there was a report on Sunday morning before the game started, which ironically happened before he went out and threw for a bajillion yards and 5 touchdowns, was that there's been no conversations with the Vikings and Sam Darnold on a long-term deal. So then it begs the question, is this like Baker Mayfield 2.0, that he goes on and has more success in his career beyond Minnesota? Does he turn into the Sam Darnold of old when he leaves Kevin O'Connell? I have no idea. I don't think anybody really does, but at least from where you were with Sam Darnold, which is, I'll add him to my roster and just see what happens this year in Minnesota, to I probably have a starter in my Superflex league as a quarterback too, at worst next year, I think, is definitely what I'm viewing Sam Darnold. But these guys like this scare the heck out of me, because I'm such a believer in what Kevin O'Connell is doing and throwing to Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson. It's a pretty sweet setup. So if he goes anywhere else next year, it'd have to be a pretty awesome spot for me to get excited again about Sam Darnold. But can't argue with it. He's been great this year.
Theoretically, I hate this for Samuel Darnold. The Vikings could just franchise him.
Yes.
They could.
If I'm the Vikings, that's what I'm doing.
With a rookie contract, they could do it.
That sucks for. Look, Darnold will get a guaranteed almost $30 million or whatever. I don't know what the QB franchise will be.
It's a lot
next year. But as a team, that's probably the move that you have to make.
And like if they win a playoff game or two, how do you not bring him back, right?
Yeah. Well, and you have proven like, hey, we had a foundation of a team that if we get good quarterback play, we can make a run. And you're like, well, to J.J. McCarthy off of his multiple knee surgeries, we go like that. That seems like a really poor plan to head into the 25 season with that.
Let me throw out these other teams because I just quickly made a list. So aside from the Vikings, would any of these get excited for? The Saints, the Giants, the Jets, the Raiders, and the Titans.
Why are you laughing?
Because these teams stink.
I mean, it all comes down to like the Giants or the Jets. If they add give me a McVay tree coach, and then we're okay. I would be cautiously optimistic about it.
I was gonna say 4 of these 5 teams don't have a coach next year as of now, assuming Pierce is gone and the interim guys don't come back if Dayball's gone. I wouldn't be excited personally.
Yeah, that's rough. And this is a completely a sidetrack thing, but I wanted to go look it up, Betz, because you were talking about passing yardage. Do you guys know who leads the league in passing yards right now?
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow. That one's easy. Do you know who 2 and 3 are? Betz, if you know who they are, don't say anything.
I don't actually. I just know the Burrow because they were talking about it the entire game.
2 and 3 in total passing yards?
Total just passing yards. It's really fun.
Is Darnold number 2?
No, he's number 6. I went and looked because I have a preseason Darnold most passing yards.
Oh,
really?
That's fun.
Yeah.
Is it Goff?
It is not Goff. Goff is down at number 8.
I feel like Geno is there in attempts, but not in yardage.
You are incorrect because Geno is number 2.
Nice.
Number 3, Kyle. It's your boy. It's your quarterback.
It's Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins.
Two Buccaneers games will boost that.
I was going to say that Thursday night game added so much.
It's
for him.
so funny to be in this world of like Kirk Cousins is. We all are angry at him. Like the public opinion on Kirk Cousins is he might be done with his 0 touchdowns over the last month and 8 interceptions, and he's number 3 in passing yards. That's fun.
That Thursday night game will probably go down as easily top 5 games I've ever been to in my life, and I'll always have that memory.
Oh, the 500-yard game.
Oh man, the swag surfing night. I mean, that was a night. That was awesome. Mike, you have one more player we want to talk about real quick with risk or reward.
Sure, it's Jerry Judy, and this one I think seems pretty easy here on the surface because he's going to be a Cleveland Brown. They traded for him. They did a preemptive extension, which, given what Jerry Judy is doing right now, that was a pretty savvy move. Like, that was a bet that you made as a team that's been making big bets lately and losing their shirt. They made a good one here with Jerry Judy. But everything is, who's the quarterback next year? If it's Deshaun Watson, I will be completely out on Jerry Judy. And this Jerry Judy's performance right here of the past since Jameis Winston has come in is like if I was a Judy guy, which I was neutral. Like I wasn't an anti-Judy. I wasn't really in on it or, over the moon as a prospect, but this is a full victory lap in my opinion. Because you're like, look what he can do if he has anybody competent throwing the ball. So heading into next year, Jerry Judy his range of outcomes is seriously like what a top 15 type of a dynasty wide receiver. He's only 25.5. It's like you're like, hey, the Browns are going to eat Watson's contract, and they're going to bring Jameis in for the next couple years. You're unbelievably excited about Jerry Judy. Or they say, we're going to let Jameis walk just like we did with Joe Flacco. We have to stay committed to Watson. And now you're like, well, Jerry Judy is the wide receiver 44 in Dynasty. Like the way that his outlook can swing so wildly this offseason is I don't know if there's another player, another wide receiver who could go that far either direction.
I'll have to look historically at year 5 being the first year that a wide receiver, steps into an elite for fantasy. And yet they had the draft capital, and we all like Jerry Judy coming out from Alabama.
Judy broke out in year 3. But in 15 games, 972 yards and 6 touchdowns.
I just remember that 3-touchdown game against the Chiefs. Just was like a bonkers week, and that changed things. But I think at this level, where you could say in Dynasty, this is a player that could be a rock solid wide receiver too if Jameis is around. That's like a crazy level that we never thought we thought Jerry Judy would just be a joke. Oh, they took him ahead of CeeDee Lamb. Still funny. But, it's like in Justin Jefferson and whoever else. They just Jerry Judy is still young. He signed a 3-year extension, I believe, with them.
Correct.
So there's a lot of life left in him for Dynasty. Betz, would you rather have Jerry Judy or Xavier Worthy in Dynasty?
Man.
Another volatile player.
The easy answer should be Judy.
Yes.
But is Deshaun Watson the quarterback?
I don't know.
Can they?
And Cleveland
they can't
is
do that.
Still.
Can they do that?
Yes, that's that has literally been my excuse for everything about thinking about the Cleveland Browns next year is, well, what if Watson's the quarterback? Well, they can't do that.
But also,
they can't.
They might have to. It's such a bad
Cleveland
situation.
Cleveland's picking 8th right now. Or they're set to have the 8th overall pick, but they are tied with 5 other teams.
You see how many bad teams there are?
Dude,
3
2
or fewer
2-11 teams, and then 6 3-10 teams. So, there's still plenty of football to the point that Cleveland could end up with a top 3 pick. They could end up in the position where you have to draft the quarterback. You take, I don't know if they'll get up to the number 1 pick, but like Sanders or whatever, one of the other quarterback prospects. If you're in the top 3, even having Watson's contract, I think the Browns would relinquish that. No, we have to do this, and Watson can start 6 games, and then we'll just. Or my deep state is, if I'm the Cleveland Browns, I am paying so many physicians that say Watson can never be cleared. We cannot in good conscience clear him to be on an NFL field. It's not safe for him. This is all for him. Nothing to do with us. We're still gonna have to give him all the money, but he can't be on the field because it's not safe for him as a human.
Oh man.
We just care about him so much. That's what you're saying. They just really care about him from a medical perspective. They can go the rest route and just eat a ton of money. I think that's what we all want them to do.
I think they have to. If you're a fan of the Browns, you don't want them on the field, right? They've been doing this for a couple of years now. You can't keep doing that to your fan base when you're just not competitive with him there. So
it's not your fan base. You can't do that to the concession workers.
For sure.
You can't do it to the anyone who's working in an office for the Cleveland Browns. You can't put him back on the field ever again.
Agreed. And real quick on the Worthy thing, I think I would take Judy. He's a legit perimeter starting receiver in the NFL. I have no idea what Worthy's going to be.
He's another name that I can't wait to talk about, because this is not me tooting a horn. It's just simply saying I don't know how this player works in the NFL.
I think they're still trying to figure it out too.
I know.
They are trying to figure it out, but if you watch the cut-ups, again, they didn't hit, but the cut-ups of the just near misses, all of them from this year, it's wild. It's wild, man. There are countless huge plays and touchdowns that were left on the field by Mahomes and Worthy.
That's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back next week, a special Christmas Wishes edition of the Dynasty Podcast, and we'll talk to you again then.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.